Hello everyone, welcome to Plutus IAS. Today, in this lecture, we are going to talk about the soil of Bundelkhand region. As in that today's series of that lecture, we are talking about that Uttar Pradesh Public Service Commission Mains Paper 6, right? So we have already done in that series 2 lectures in that part 1 and part 2 about the soils of UP, and this division of the soil of UP is actually taken by the government of Uttar Pradesh, their sites. Okay. So before start of that third part, that part series of the soil of Bundelkhand region, I want to tell where we are talking about. Okay. So actually we are talking about this zone. Okay. So in that soil types of Uttar Pradesh, this is a chart which has which was in the which is present in the sugarcane department of Uttar Pradesh. So in that soil type, in front of that we have mentioned that name of agroclimatic zone. So in that one of the series which is already available on the YouTube, I have already talked about that agroclimatic zone. Okay, so this is whatever we are talking about. This all is specifically with reference to paper 6. Okay, yeah, and that because local geography, it's main one of the syllabus in your geography and economy, so many things are in your paper 6. Okay, so we have already talked about that alluvial soil. Okay, in that alluvial soil, the total division from that north up till here, we have talked about division wise Tarai and Bhabha region, western plain zone, and then we have talked about that uh, southern western zone, western plain zone, midwestern zone, and the division like that Bhabhar, Tarai, Bhangar and Khadar. This kind of division, this part 1 and part 2, this is something we have covered in the part 1, and these two we have covered in that part 1 and part 2 separately. As you can see here, that alluvial soil we have divided into the soil of Tarai region and soil of Bhabha region, right? You guys can see this here, soil of Bhabha region and soil of Tarai region. In that part 1 we have talked about. Then in next, soil of Gangetic plain we have talked about. In this we have talked about that Bhangar, है ना, Bhangar soil, Uttar Pradesh, with this characteristic feature, related crops and everything in that very detailed. And then we talked about that Khadar soil, right? So in that today lecture we are going to talk about, actually we should have been talk the salty and saline soil and the sandy and the loamy soil. Okay, so if we see the geography of Uttar Pradesh, what we see this region is occur in that Bundelkhand zone, that both salty and saline soil Bundelkhand zone, and sandy loamy soil, that also Bundelkhand zone. Of course, because look, the differences actually can be of various level. Okay, so the difference can be of the soil just at the regional level, at the type of soil level with respect to the agroclimatic zone, so many things. But here we have actually talked about the type of soil. So alluvial soil is one of the type of soil. Salty or the saline in the structure, that's a different. It's a different types of. Then sandy, that means a little bit western zone. Of course, in that both are the Bundelkhand region. We are going to talk about, which is also in that Bundelkhand zone. Then we talk about the black and rugged soil and also in Bundelkhand zone. So if you talk about here, we are going to talk about the soil type, which is also related with that zone wise. Okay. Then in that next series, we are going to talk about the red soil or the Vindhyan zone separately. So today actually we are going to talk about that soil of the Bundelkhand zone, that is divided into the salty or saline soil, sandy or loamy soil, and black or regal soil. This regal soil actually further divided into marks and Kabar. This we think we are also talking about. Okay. So the soil of Bundelkhand region, the Bundelkhand region of Uttar Pradesh is a complex geological transition zone. Okay, why it is a geological region? Because if we talk about that Bundelkhand region, MP के जो the region of MP, उसका ये प्लेट्यू वाला रीजन है, ये इधर एंड हो रहा है, एंड देन गंगा यमुना प्लेन्स, उसका भी रीजन ये इधर एंड हो रहा है, राइट? So this region is your Bundelkhand region, which is actually the transition zone between that central plain or the Gangetic plains from that northern and that MP plateau region from that southern, right? So that is why the both type of soil is found there. Okay, where the massive Deccan traps meets the Gangetic plain. Look, this is something mentioned. So because it is a Deccan trap, and we know that Deccan trap is actually made up of that volcanic soil, igneous rock converted into so many weathering process, metamorphic and sedimentary, and that Gangetic plain ka soil, it is a kind of sedimentation soil, right? We have already talked about the Gangetic plain. You guys can see there over there. This result in an unique soil mosaic ranging from heavy moisture retaining clays to light thirsty sand. Okay, we'll talk about it one by one. Here's an elaborate of the 3 primary soil categories found in the UP portion, the Bundelkhand. बुंदेलखंड में अच्छा कौन कौन से आपके मेनली रीजन में हम किसकी बात करेंगे? जैसे कि when we talk about that red soil is actually also of course in that, not in this lecture. So red soil is also found in that, mainly in the Vindhyan ranges, but it also somewhere it is known as a local one, the Padwa soil. It is Padwa soil. It is also found in that type of the mixed area of that Bundelkhand region. Okay, but major red soil जो है आपकी विंध्याचल में है, so that in that lecture we are not going to talk about, because here the majority of the black soil, salty and the sandy farm is found. So we talk about the 3D region. Okay, so what are the regions? Jhansi, Jalon, Lalitpur, Hamirpur, Mahoba, Bana and okay. So black or the Rakar soil, that is locally known as Mars and Kabar. Mars and Kabar. Origin कैसे हुआ? इसकी parent directly formed from the weathering of basaltic rocks, that is Deccan Trap extension, and ancient niche and cyst of the Bundelkhand region. What is a niche and cyst? Niche and cyst are the type of your igneous rock, right, which is formed through the volcanic process, eruption. Process formed over the thousands of years through the chemical decomposition of volcanics under the semi-arid condition, right? This is also something important. So compared to the plains region, of course, a little bit high temperature is also there. Okay, Bundelkhand black soil is a part of the Trans-Yamuna tract. It is divided into 2 subtypes. Okay, the first one is Mar and second one is Kabar. Mar is highly clay. Everyone know about the clay. Clay. Look, the thing is, you do not need to do the ratification, as we can just understand by the different things. Clay कैसी होती है? It has so much water or a little bit, chip kind of, है ना? But as soon as it become dried, it like produces the cracks or something like that, right? So the Mar, the rich black soil. Okay, टेक्सचर कैसा है? हाई क्ले कंटेंट, वेरी फाइन ग्रेन, है ना? क्ले के पॉट्स बनाए जाते हैं, इट्स वेरी फाइन. इन हिंदी में if you want to talk about चिकनी मिट्टी, इट्स अ वेरी चिकनी, है ना? क्ले के पॉट्स, क्ले के टॉयज, so many things are made from this. Composition क्या है? Contains 60% of clay. It is rich in lime, that is calcium, but lacks organic matter. Okay, character क्या है? It is highly calcareous. When where wet, it becomes extremely sticky, not calcareous that much highly, but yeah, it is character, it is not highly, that much calcareous. Actually, this is the main characteristics. When wet, it becomes extremely sticky or gummy. When dry, it develops the deep white tracks. This is one of the very important characteristics. Color कैसा उसका होता है? Of course, black है तो deep black और brownish black. ये आपका क्या हो गया? ये आपका मार टाइप होगा. काबर में क्या होता है? ये मिक्स्ड ब्लैक सॉइल होती है. टेक्सचर कैसा होता है? अ मिक्स ऑफ क्ले एंड सैंड, लिटिल बिट. उतनी फाइन ग्रेन नहीं होती जितनी आपकी मार होती है. काबर इज कंपैरेटिवली लेस फाइन ग्रेन, बट स्टिल डोमिनेटेड बाय क्ले. मतलब मेजर होता है. सपोज दैट इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इसमें 80% आपका फाइन, इसमें मे बी 70 या 60% होगा, लाइक दैट ओनली. ओके, इट इज लेस फर्टाइल देन द मार, बट मोर वाइडली डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड. इट इज एक्सट्रीमली हार्ड टू प्लॉ, है ना, बिकॉज it turns into the solid rock like mass upon drying. Water holding capacity comparatively कम है. Color usually dark gray और dull black. अब ये combine है. Now this is something specific about the mar and Kabar. Now this is combined characteristics. Texture कैसा होता है? Generally fine grain with a high clay content. It is self-flowing. What is the meaning of the self-flowing? This is sometimes some types of key terminology which you need to mention in your answers, mains answer writing. Okay. Okay, fine. Then it is self-flowing because it develops the deep fissures, that is crack. Okay, so what happens जब आपका precipitation होता है, जब rainy season आता है, तो वो बहुत ऐसा clay form, it become closed, है ना? जब जो मिट्टी वाली pot होती है, sorry, जो pot वाली soil होती है, तो when you put it the water, it become very close. But because it in the natural condition, in the field condition, when it become dry, it become develop the wide cracks. So whatever the nutrient or the minerals are present in the environment or something like that, है ना, they become actually mixed with the deep white cracks, है ना. So that is called self-flowing because it develop deep fissures of the cracks when dry, allowing oxygen to reach deeper layers, है ना. जैसे कि आपकी soil है तो इसमें आपके cracks develop हो गए. So like this is a kind of, है ना. तो यहाँ पे आपके deep cracks develop हो गए. So here the oxygen from that environment can mix up there. That is called the self-flowing. Soil particles from the surface fall into that these cracks, resulting in natural mixing of that self-adhesion. That is one of the very important point of that black soil. Characteristics कैसे हैं? Highly hygroscopic, absorb moisture well. Similar, just consider like that your pot वाली जो clay होती है ना, वही वाली. it becomes extremely sticky, very sticky when wet and rock hard when dry. Of course, it is rich in calcium, magnesium and aluminium, but poor in nitrogen. Chemical profile कैसा होता है? Of course, black है तो iron, lime, calcium, magnesium में rich होती है, aluminium भी अच्छी कारक होता है. Deficient in N, P and organic matter. Nitrogen, phosphorus और humus content नहीं होता that much. pH level कैसा होता है? Generally basic, alkaline in nature, है ना? Mostly found in Jalon, Hamirpur and parts of Banda. Remember that. That's how you write the everything about that one type of soil. Reasons of formation क्या है इसके? Formed from the disintegration of the basaltic trap. Basaltic मतलब वही आपका volcanic. Basaltic trap rocks, volcanic origin and the ancient crystalline niche and of the cyst region. Agricultural significances क्या है इसके? The agriculture of South UP is dictated by the behavior of the soil, okay, because this is in the South Bundelkhand wale region mein, right? So the cotton factor, we know that generally when we talk about the blood cell, irrespective of that Uttar Pradesh, then we talk about the western region of that India, like Maharashtra majorly, right? So that is also cotton factor, internationally known as black cotton soil, though in UP pulses are more dominant. जो हम लोग ब्लैक कॉटन की सॉइल की बात कर रहे हैं, दिस इज मेजरली वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट महाराष्ट्र रीजन, बिकॉज द ब्लैक सॉइल इज वेरी गुड फॉर दैट कॉटन क्रॉप्स. ओके, यूपी में क्या है, इसमें मोर डोमिनेंट फॉर दैट पल्सेस. खरीफ में क्या है, ज्वार, तिल, सीसम जिसको सेसमे बोलते हैं, एंड कॉटन इन लिमिटेड एरिया. देखो एग्जैक्ट फैक्चुअल पॉइंट यू हैव टू राइट, कॉटन है बट इन द लिमिटेड एरिया, मेजॉरिटी महाराष्ट्र है. रबी में दिस इज अ पल्स बाउल ऑफ यूपी. अच्छा, व्हाई द पल्सेस? बिकॉज इफ यू सी द अरहर, right, that had that kind of content which can grow in such type of soil. Okay, gram, chana, the most important crop, chana, masoor, lentil and peas, linseed, alsi, of course, so many medical benefits also, often grow secondary crop. Wheat, देखो wheat is one of that very important rabi crops. ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं हो सकता. Guys remember, इन्हीं points पे आपके questions बनते हैं, है ना? Like बुंदेलखंड रीजन में या इकोनॉमिक जोन या what can be that sustainable agriculture, such kinds of answer you need to write with the combined knowledge. अगर आप सिर्फ wheat पढ़ लो तो maybe it will be difficult, but when you are writing, है ना, connecting so many dots in your mind and in your answer, then you can write the best answer. Connect the any type of crop with that agroclimatic zone, soils, water availability, types of climate, so many things, then you can write a good answer. Okay, soil में देखो wheat का problem क्या है, wheat हो सकता है but only possible with assured irrigation. क्योंकि क्या है, because water holding capacity अच्छी है इसकी, but if it will become dry, it become cracked and very deeply cracked, so the crop cannot sustain. So assured irrigation for the longer duration, as the soil becomes too hard for the roots to penetrate without the moisture. So that means if you want to grow the wheat over there, you need to provide that irrigation facilities continuously, because when we talk about the irrigation, when we talk about the wheat, आपका ये वाला जो रीजन है ना, नवंबर, दिसंबर, जनवरी, फरवरी वाला राबी क्रॉप्स है, ठीक है, तो आपको वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी देनी पड़ेगी. एग्जांपल, इन द राबी सीजन द काबर सॉइल, मार्स एंड काबर ऑफ हमीरपुर इज फेमस फॉर द प्रोड्यूसिंग हाई क्वालिटी देसी चना, chickpeas without much irrigation, because the soil retains monsoon moisture so effectively. Challenges क्या है? Of course, soil के challenges आपके syllabus में है. Workability, the window for that plowing is very short. If it rains too much, the soil is too sticky. If it is too dry, it is too hard. मतलब if the soil become too sticky also, then the aeration will not be very proper. So even that also one of the problematic for the crop growth. Okay. Erosion in the ravines of the Yamuna and Betwa, black soil is highly prone to the gully erosion. Gully erosion, we know that the kind of landform we have talked about. जैसे कि आपकी मेन रिवर है, ये आपकी ट्रिब्यूटरीज है ना, सो इनसे बहुत हाई लेवल पे इरोजन होता है, ठीक है, ट्रिब्यूटरीज के थ्रू, या फिर उनकी एक स्ट्रीम सपोज ऐसे जा रही है तो उसकी स्ट्रीम के थ्रू देयर इज अ वेरी हाई इरोजन. लो नाइट्रोजन है, रिक्वायर्स हेवी सप्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ यूरिया एंड ऑर्गेनिक मैन्योर्स टू मेंटेन. So this thing we have covered about that black soil of the Bundelkhand region, the one of the soil of the Bundelkhand region. Now next we are going to talk about that sandy sandy or loamy soil. Locally it's called as Padwa or the Parola. ठीक है, इसको locally इस name से जानते हैं. This is a lighter, more manageable soil compared to the heavy clay soil. It represents to the upland of the soil region. जैसे कि little bit, because Bundelkhand is a plateau region, तो आपके compared to the if you go from that north, तो compared to हाँ of course if you go from the north, it is comparatively at the higher land, मतलब plateau केस पे पाई जाती है, ठीक है. What is the texture and qualities? A balanced blend of sand and silt. यहाँ पे क्या है? It's not like आपकी किस टाइप की है? Sandy plus loamy soil. ठीक है? This is not that much sandy as it is from Rajasthan or that wala region. That it not that loamy content भी है इसमें. Okay, so it has a kind of balanced thing with a minor fraction of clay. Okay, all of these thing qualities. That is why even it is the more one of the significant crop after compared to your black soil. Okay, it has a coarse gritty texture that ensures a excellent drainage. Remember that point. Characteristics it is light reddish to yellowish or brown. While it has low water holding capacity compared to the of course black soil, it is very easy to cultivate. जैसे कि unlike your black soil, when it holds the water, right, it become very sticky. The particle come very closer because it has in the black soil, but it has a sandy content also. So compared to the black soil, it is little bit more easy to cultivate. जब बहुत when the soil particles become very close, it will be difficult to the cultivation. Okay, so it is very easy to cultivate and respond exceptionally well to the fertilizers क्योंकि उसमें particles भी हैं. ठीक है, and irrigation. Porosity कैसी है? High aeration है. The soil has large pores which allow air to reach. Sandy है ना? That's why the pores structure will be there to reach the roots, preventing the root suffocation during that heavy rains. Unlike your black soil, when the black soil contains the heavy rain, it becomes very cloggy, है ना? And the root becomes suffocate. So that when the very high content moisture content is, although rain content is also there, the black soil is not very good for crops. Okay, structure it is granular and friable, easily crumbled. Sandy है of course crumbled हो जाएंगी. Kurkura kind of, you can say that. Unlike the black soil mass, it does not turn into the hard mass when dry. Sand को हम लोगों ने देखा है ना, become not very much even after the dry. That is something one of the quality. District कौन से? Dominant in Jhansi, Hamirpur, Lalitpur, and the highest elevation of Hamirpur district. Pockets of a little bit Banda and Chitrakoot region also. है ना, इसमें major नहीं है, but pockets of. Reasons क्या है? For the formation, result of the weathering of the Bundelkhand granite complex and the deposition of wind flown or the waterborne sand particles. जैसे कि आपका sand में generally होता है, right? Okay. Chemical profiles क्या है इसकी? Chemical profiles are organic matter generally low in humus. Why it is low in humus? Because बहुत high temperature है. It is a little bit upland पे भी है, sandy भी है. So when the temperature will become very high, the humus formation cannot occur, right? So humus formation is occur by layer. तो जब टेम्परेचर बहुत आई है तो इट बिकम वेरी इजीली डिग्रेड, है ना, और वो एक्टिविटी ज्यादा होती है. ड्यू टू द हाई टेम्परेचर इन द बुंदेलखंड रीजन, ऑर्गेनिक मैटर डिकम्पोजेस एंड डिसअपीयर्स रैपिडली. मिनरल प्रोफाइल क्या है? रिच इन आयरन एंड पोटाश, डेफिशिएंट इन नाइट्रोजन एंड फास्फोरस. Obviously we know that general soil of the UP is deficient in nitrogen and phosphorus. That is why NPK used as a fertilizer, right? Urea and all. pH level neutral to slightly acidic, making it suitable for the wide variety of crops compared to the alkaline crystalline soil. Crops कौन-कौन सी? ज्वार, sorghum, bajra, that is pearl millet, oil seeds like mustard, mustard. Rabi crops कौन सी आपकी? Wheat होती है, only possible with the heavy irrigation because यहाँ पे heavy irrigation. अच्छा, there's one more thing. In the black soil, the irrigation was necessary or heavy irrigation was necessary for the wheat cropping because after becoming dry, it started developing the cracks or the deep void cracks, which is very hard for the such crops roots to penetrate. वहाँ पे reason अलग है. यहाँ पे reason is not that much holding capacity of the water or the soil retention, water retention capacity because of the sandy structure. ठीक है? So that is why it need to require the heavy irrigation. Tube wells, canals, because of the soil loses moisture quickly. Sand को हमने देखा है ना, it loses moisture very quickly. Mustard and oil seeds, these are the major cash crop for the farmers in Jhansi and Chandigarh. Write the points like this, a complete package. ठीक है? Example, Jhansi utilizes its parwa soil for the extensive fodder and pulse cultivation like moong dal, as these crops refer to aerated, well-drained environmental these soil provides. That means moong dal is one of the crops which can grow as a sustainable agriculture, है ना, and that has a very good economic balance. Okay. Achha, one thing I really want to talk about, although it will be again Padwa soil, somewhere you also see that red soil is also known as somewhere the Padwa soil. Okay, do not get confused. Then the third type, the salty or the saline local known as Reh or Usar. This is the third type of the soil in that Bundelkhand region. Okay, what it is about, locally referred as Reh. These are the problem soil. अच्छा, why it is problem soil? क्योंकि कैसी salt है और saline है. When the so iska pH, even just before the, just by knowing the name, if you do not remember everything, so what we can understand, salty or saline में क्या होगा, इसका pH content will be very high, है ना. So if the pH content will be very high, around 8 से plus ही होगा, that will not very good for the soil cropping. Okay, why we are talking about the soil, because UP Uttar Pradesh is their agriculture dominating state. Okay, yeah. So इसको rate, these are the problems are often found in that patches. Continuous नहीं है ये, ठीक है, rather than the continuous belt. ऊसर word जिसका local name है, और so whenever you are writing about that type of soil, please mention that local name which is making your copy original and authentic and a little bit unique also. Usar derived from that Usar derived from that Sanskrit terminology, that is ustra. Ustra means hota hai sterile. So what we are getting here, that this soil is not very good for that crop cultivation, right? Ray, the white salty crust or the color. Texture कैसा है, qualities कैसी है, fine textured है, but often covered by the brittle white crust of the soil during that summer. We know that some of the soil we see, it become a little, whitish. First, because of the high temperature. Second, because of the high salt concentration, right? It feels soapy when wet, little bit sticky, like slimy, not sticky, I would say, the slimy. Okay. Characteristics क्या है, high pH है, of course. देखो alkaline है, salty का मतलब ये salt concentration will be high, है ना. तो high pH और alkaline, it suffers from that high concentration of sodium salts, which are toxic to most plant roots and restrict water intake. So when we going to talk about that, marshy a little bit. So UP ka this region is little bit salty or the marshy, where mangroves kind of, when we talk about that wetlands, we can talk about this region where the saline or the salty types of soil is found. Texture generally fine, textured, slitty or clay, of course, but the salt makes the soil structure dispersed. Permeability कैसी होती है, extremely pure. So that is why, अच्छा, connected to with that point, the mangrove plant generally grow also in that soil salty content, है ना, about this point. Makes the soil structure dispersed, permeability extremely poor. So what is the one characteristics of the mangrove? That their roots, some of the roots from the soil to upside, because having that oxygen for the respiration, right? This is the one thing. The high sodium content causes soil particles to swell, choking the pores. Salt concentration, of course, so sodium concentration will be high, which will choke this pores. This leads to surface water logging even after light rain. Please, guys, knows that. Hard pan formation. Often a hard layer of the conker, calcium carbonate nodules, forms about that 1 meter below the surface, which physically blocks the root penetration and groundwater recharge. Chemical characteristic, pH level will be the high, typically ranging from 8.5 to 10.5. Rich in sodium, of course, calcium, magnesium, and chlorides and sulfates. Because of that, the chemical structure is very salty. Okay. Then deficient in N, P, and zinc, nitrogen, phosphorus, and zinc. So all of the type of the Bundelkhand soil having that deficiency or lack of the nitrogen and phosphorus. Presence of ray. During the summer, what is ray? You need to understand. Capillary action brings the dissolved salts to the surface. जैसे कि आपकी soil है, so we know that groundwater recharge through the capillary action of the soil. So what happens? We have heard about that evapotranspiration, है ना, in soils, in plants. When the temperature becomes very high, the leaves of the soil become wilt. Wilting एक process होता है, जिससे कि जो transpiration, evapotranspiration जो होता है वो बहुत high होता है. मतलब water content of the plants will become soaked up by like evaporate in that atmosphere. Similar capillary action occurs in the soil, है ना. So whatever the soil content, whatever the moisture content present or the water content present in such type of soil, in the very high temperature, the evaporation process will occur through which the water content of the soil will become evaporate, है ना. salt to the surface. When the water evaporates, it leaves a white floor like efflorescence called rain because it has the salt content, है ना? तो salt content जो below में था वो अब कहाँ पर आ गया? Surface में आ गया. So now the surface also become very salty. So that is why it is known as the rain, है ना? And it is not very good for that agriculture purposes. डिस्ट्रिक्ट कौन से हैं? दो लाइन पॉकेट्स ऑफ जालौन, बांदा एंड प्लेन्स ऑफ हमीरपुर. अदर डिस्ट्रिक्ट कौन से? अच्छा, वन मोर थिंग, आपकी जो सॉल्टी और सलाइन है ये आपके एटा रीजन, मैनपुरी रीजन में भी पाई जाती है, ठीक है. बट द थिंग इज कि आपका मैनपुरी और एटा बुंदेलखंड में नहीं आता. इट इज कनेक्टेड ट्रांस यमुना, यू कैन से बेटर. दैट इज व्हाई वी हैव मेंशन अबाउट दैट मैनपुरी, एटा, अलीगढ़ एंड इटावा एंड अलीगढ़ रीजन. द हाईएस्ट कंसंट्रेशन आपका एटा में होता है. सॉल्टी सलाइन का आपका मेजर कंसंट्रेशन आपका एटा में होता है. बट द टॉपिक ऑफ टुडे, if you want to differentiate on the basis of region, you can also mention that. If you want to differentiate on the basis of soil, type of soil, then also you can mention. It is completely fine. The thing is, the fact or the information or the concept should be correct, right? So yeah, this is an important point that other districts में आपका एटा जो है highest concentration है. रायबरेली, सुल्तानपुर, उन्नाव, थोड़ा सा रीजन कानपुर का, ठीक है. ये आपका थोड़ा रीजन है, मेजर आपका ये है. फिर आपका बुंदेलखंड का रीजन है. रीजन क्या है फॉर्मेशन का? कैनाल सीपेज, द कैनाल मिनान्स इन वेस्टर्न यूपी एंड द शारदा कैनाल, शारदा वाटर कैनाल कमांड एरियाज ओवर इरिगेशन. बहुत सारा वहां पे इरिगेशन यूज होता है, इरिगेशन वाटर नीड्स टू राइज इन द वाटर टेबल, है ना. तो आपका क्या वाटर टेबल का उसमें इंक्रीज हो जाता है. दिस ब्रिंग्स द सब सरफेस सॉल्ट टू द टॉप लेयर. जो यहाँ पर भी है ना, इरिगेशन वाटर के थ्रू टॉप लेयर पे आ जाता है. सेमी एरिड क्लाइमेट यहाँ का है. हाई इवेपोरेशन, ऑफ कोर्स वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट दैट. हाई इवेपोरेशन रेट्स, लिविंग बिहाइंड द सॉल्ट मिनरल्स विद द हेल्प ऑफ दैट कैपिलरी एक्शन. टोपोग्राफी कैसी है? लो लाइन, सॉसर शेप्ड डिप्रेशन. ऐसे प्लेन्स के अ लिटिल बिट प्लेट्यू रीजन्स की बाद में है. तो सॉसर शेप्ड डिप्रेशन prevent the natural drainage causing salts to accumulate over centuries. So in that sandy soil mein we have talked about that best drainage, one of that, and in that salty saline mein we have noticed that the poor drainage. Crops कौन सी mainly कौन सी होनी चाहिए? Salt tolerant crops. Guys, please connect this point here with that wetland also. In your UP, after the Tamil Nadu, the maximum, I think Tamil Nadu is the first ranker where the maximum number of wetlands found. I think अभी ऊपर नीचे कुछ हो गया होगा. I'll be a bit when we are going to talk about the wildlife and climate, wetland and everything, biosphere reserve, national park, then we're going to talk about it. Otherwise, UP में आपके अच्छे खासे नंबर में wetlands हैं, ठीक है. अपडेट हुए सांडी, समसा, this kind of wetlands are named under your Ramsar Convention, of course, right? So कैसे होती है यहाँ पे salt tolerant crops which can survive. यहाँ से आपका प्लेम्स का क्वेश्चन, what are the salt tolerant crops? Barley and the sugar beet. Sugar beet was one of the salt tolerant crops and specific grasses like नेपियर ग्रास. एक और ग्रास होती है करनाल ग्रास, है ना. ये आपकी salt tolerant ग्रास होती है. हॉर्टिकल्चर में क्या है? Certain salt tolerant trees like anola, that is gooseberry, bear, of course we know that bear, guava can be grown if the planting pits are filled with the good soil. Example, farmers often use, guys, this is your prelims question again, है ना. What is the treatment and what the farmers use to correct the salty or the saline soil for that cropping? यहाँ पे आपका वर्ड है gypsum और grow dhancha, that is green manure, to reclaim this lands before attempting to plant paddy or wheat, because naturally it is not very good for that paddy or wheat. Okay, so whenever you are preparing by this videos or any other areas or by any method by yourself, please do not prepare just for mains or just for prelims. Everything is correlated. If you will prepare, abhi to exam postpone ho gaya, some date is already shifted to December, right? So you have plenty of time. Please cover the mains before than this, right? prelims के पहले आप mains cover कर लो, साथ में आपका prelims होता जाएगा. Even if you are preparing paper 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, any of the above, it is not that mains का पहले करोगे, prelims का बाद में करोगे. It's just that जैसे exam आएगा, as you go closer to the December of the exam date, you'll start focusing more on the prelims, and after clearing the prelims, you'll start focusing mainly on your mains. But do not just wait for that after clearing prelims, I'll start preparing for the mains. You will not have that much time. There's a plenty of sources, and this is something new for you. But maybe those students who has already attempted, they have just to revise. So you are competing with them. Do not forget it. So prepare. है ना. It's not like they'll also get selected you. दोनों balance selection है. So you just आपके साथ new ideas, new content, updated version, right? So prepare accordingly. In that series, in the next series, we'll talk about the next red soil in that Vindhyan region and related crops. Thank you everyone.